There was a version of the internet that was a lot more vibrant and alive. For about 15 years, it was where a huge part of the fun lived. It was the browser games kids played in a school computer lab, the cartoons amateurs made in their bedroom, the oddly entertaining stick figure fight scenes. It was the era of the internet that was entirely chaotic and homemade, that a whole generation grew up inside, and all of it ran on one piece of software. The software let anybody, a kid, an art student, someone with no money and no formal training, build something interactive and put it in front of the entire planet, with no company's permission, no app store, and no gatekeepers. At its peak, it was installed on roughly 99% of the computers on Earth. It was quietly the most widely deployed creative tool in the history of the internet, with nearly 1 billion users. That was until one man decided it had to die. Now, had this been just any person, the world would have moved on and not thought twice. But the man who both started and led a charge against the software just so happened to be one of the greatest and most influential figures in tech. This started a dramatic battle for the future of the internet and entertainment application and games as a whole on billions of devices. The company that made the software fought back as much as it could. It took out ads, went to war in the press, and tried to spur on its millions of users. Despite the monumental effort, the software did not survive, putting an end to one of the greatest periods of the internet era. This is the story of the Flash Wars, how Steve Jobs killed a software that millions of creatives and developers relied on. Our story begins in the mid-1990s, when a tiny company called FutureWave built a little drawing program for pen-based computers. At the time, pen-based computers were a small niche market, so niche in fact that the product FutureWave had built was going nowhere, so they pivoted. They added the ability to animate, and in 1995 they released it as Future Splash Animator, hoping to get a piece of the growing animation market of the mid-90s. Future Splash was quite the neat product. One clever thing it did was the use of vector graphics, which are images described by math rather than by pixel. This allowed the software to output tiny files, and tiny mattered enormously because this was the age of dial-up, where a single large image could take a minute to crawl onto your screen. Future Splash could deliver smooth animation over a connection slower than almost anything you've ever used in your life. FutureWave initially tried to sell this product to Adobe. Adobe said no, but for the time being this didn't matter. Other people saw it and loved it. Microsoft grabbed Future Splash to power animated content on an early version of MSN. Disney used it for some of its animations, and Fox used it for a Simpsons site. Then in November 1996, a company called Micromedia bought the whole thing, shortened the clumsy name Future Splash down to a single sharp syllable, and released it as Micromedia Flash. Then came the update that changed everything. In the year 2000, Flash added a real programming language called ActionScript, and in that moment, it stopped being a way to make cartoons and became a way to build anything: interactive menus, video players, and full-on games. Flash could now do things the plain web simply could not. Flash essentially was democratizing creation. Before Flash, if you wanted to make an interactive game or an animation and show it to the world, you needed real programming skill, expensive tools, and somewhere to distribute it. Flash erased all of that. The animation tools were approachable enough that a teenager could learn them over a summer, and the distribution problem, the thing that had always stopped ordinary people, Flash solved completely. This was because Micromedia gave away the Flash player as a free browser plugin, and everyone installed it. By the mid-2000s, Flash player was on 99% of internet-connected computers. Think about what that meant. If you made something in Flash, it would just run for basically every person on the internet. An entire culture erupted out of this. In 1998, a man named Tom Fulp built a website called Newgrounds, a place where anyone could upload their Flash games and animations for anyone else to play. It became one of the most vibrant creative communities the internet has ever produced. Crude, hilarious, occasionally brilliant, entirely made by amateurs. Careers were born here. People who are now famous animators, game designers, and studio founders got their start uploading Flash cartoons to Newgrounds as teenagers. It was messy and anarchic and completely alive, and it existed because Flash had handed the tools of creation to people who had never been allowed to hold them before. And it wasn't just the amateurs. The professional internet ran on Flash too. When YouTube launched, it played its videos through Flash. The same was true for other video streaming sites such as Vimeo and Hulu. For years, if you watched a video on the web, Flash was almost certainly the thing making it play. Micromedia would wound up being bought by Adobe in 2005 for a blockbuster $3.5 billion deal. Having turned it down a decade earlier, Adobe now sat on top of the single most important piece of software on the web. Flash was everywhere. Flash was invincible, but as we all know, nothing is truly invincible. In January 2007, on a stage in San Francisco, Steve Jobs pulled a device out of his pocket and changed the trajectory of the entire technology industry. The iPhone did not run Flash when it launched. Almost nobody thought that was a big deal. They thought it was a limitation, a gap, a missing feature that Apple would surely fix in the next version. But it was not a gap, it was a decision, and Jobs had made it on purpose. To understand why, you have to understand what Flash actually was under the hood. Flash was a browser plugin. It runs inside your browser but outside the browser safety controls with deep access to your computer. That was fine more or less in the desktop era, but it came with a permanent ugly cost. Flash was a security nightmare. It had a constant unending stream of vulnerabilities that hackers exploited to break into people's machines. With its animations chewing through power, it crashed constantly on Apple's own computers, and it had been built from its very first day for a mouse and a keyboard. It had no idea what to do with a finger on a touchscreen. Jobs was building a future made entirely of touchscreen running on batteries, so he refused to let it onto the iPhone. And as the iPhone became the most important product on the planet, Flash's absence stopped looking like a limitation and started looking like a death sentence, because the technology that couldn't run on the device everyone suddenly carried everywhere was a technology with no future. Adobe was furious. This was the crown jewel it had paid billions for, and Apple was locking it out of the most important market in computing. The two companies went to war, publicly and bitterly. Steve Jobs escalated the war to a whole new level. He published an open letter to the entire world, titled simply, Thoughts on Flash. In it, Jobs laid out, point by point, cold and precise, every reason Flash had to die. He said Adobe was calling Apple the closed system and Flash the open one, and that in fact, the opposite was true. Flash was a proprietary product controlled entirely by one company, while the web standards Apple wanted to use belonged to everyone. He hammered the security holes and battery drain issues, and he named Flash's successor, the thing that would do everything Flash did without any of the poison, a new open standard called HTML5, which could play video and run animations natively inside the browser with no plugin at all. The letter was devastating, precisely because so much of it was correct, but Adobe was not going to take a public execution lying down, and it fired back with an argument of its own. Adobe's leadership turned Jobs' own words around on him. Jobs had called Flash the closed proprietary system and Apple the champion of the open web. Adobe told the world, look at who's actually building a wall. Apple was the one deciding what could and couldn't run on their iPhone, forcing every piece of software on earth to pass through its app store and hand over its 30% cut. Flash, whatever its flaws, let anyone put anything on the open web with no gatekeeper at all. So who really was the closed system? Adobe took the message public with a defiant advertising campaign built around two words: we love choice. The none too subtle implications being that Steve Jobs did not. A thriving Flash full of free games and apps that ran in any browser was a direct threat to the walled garden of the App Store he was building. Kill Flash and you funnel the world's developers into the one store where Apple sets the terms and collects the toll. But despite Adobe's counter arguments, Jobs' letter wasn't a lie. It was a genuinely damning, mostly accurate diagnosis of real serious problems delivered by the most powerful and persuasive figure in in the entire industry. And everyone was watching, because when the most influential man in technology writes 1,500 words explaining why a piece of software is obsolete and dangerous, every other company in the industry reads it and quietly starts making plans. Adobe thought it pushed Flash onto Android phones to prove Jobs wrong, to show that a real smartphone could run it, and for a moment it was there, until everyone discovered that Jobs had been right all along. Flash on a phone was exactly the sluggish, battery-draining, crash-prone mess he'd predicted, and one by one the platforms gave up on it. Android quietly dropped Flash support, the mobile experiment collapsed. Meanwhile, the thing Jobs had named in his letter began to do its patient work. HTML5 grew up, and the giants of the web, the very companies whose entire businesses had once been built on Flash, began to walk away from it. YouTube switched its video player to HTML5, so did Facebook, Netflix, and a slew of other companies. Google's browser started making Flash harder and harder to run, burying it behind warnings and clicks, slowly choking off its air supply. Flash had become a technology draining out of the world, one website at a time. By 2017, it was over in everything but name, and Adobe finally announced that it would end Flash itself. It gave the world 3 years notice, an unusually long, almost tender runway, not out of hope, but because so much had been built on Flash that ripping it out clearly was a genuine engineering nightmare, and everyone needed time to escape. The date they chose was December 31st, 2020, and when the day came, Adobe did not simply stop supporting Flash. It did something colder and more final. It pushed out an update that made Flash Player refuse to run at all. A kill switch baked in that would actively block any Flash content from ever playing again, and in an instant across the entire planet, the old internet went dark. 15 years of internet culture went silent on a single afternoon. And the internet that came after, sleek, safe, walled gardens and app stores, is more professional, more secure, and in some quiet way that's hard to name, more closed. The gates Flash had torn down got rebuilt taller. Thanks for watching.